All right, this is Cleopatra, Daughter of the Nile by Kristiana Gregory, and we are starting today on page 127. So this is scrolls 8 through 11. We've jumped to a new section of the book, and it is the 12th of Februarius. Folly has struck, woe to me. Yesterday was the first sunny day in weeks. Neva and I took our clothes trunks outside to our courtyard to dry out our ever-damp dresses and shawls. We draped them over the statues and bushes. Oh, we missed the heat and sun of Alexandria. I set Puso to the task of sharpening his sword, polishing my necklaces, the usual. As he and Neva are literate, they often write notes to each other, which are passed through my willing hands, then destroyed, so they might never be read by father. Thus, their romance remains a stolen glance here and there and whispered conversations when we three sit by the fountain. Anyone watching will think it is I who am instructing them, rather than the three of us sharing thoughts. It's not the elevated sort that I have with Theophilus and Olympus, but the words exchanged among us are sweet nonetheless and kind. I am soothed by our hours together, but I digress. My folly was that while sunning ourselves, I brought out my letters and papers to read where the light was good. I was distracted by the sound of horses approaching up the gravel road and dogs barking. Hellos were shouted. I knew the voice of Atticus, but not the other. Father must have been sleeping again. I hurried out, Neva behind me, then Puso. When I reached the entryway, I dismissed them both for the afternoon. Our visitor was Marcus Tullius Cicero, a stately man in a toga that was wrapped twice over his shoulder. I had heard of him. Yes, in fact, Neva has read me many of his speeches. He is Rome's most famous orator, a lawyer feared in the courtroom by his opponents for his sharp tongue. He's been banished from this city for over a year. The reasons, I don't know, politics perhaps. It seemed curious to me that he was so well dressed because Julia told me that whenever a man is banished from Rome, he's thereafter forbidden to wear the toga. Maybe Cicero just does as he pleases. He did not talk about his exile, only mentioning that it had to do with words he said against Caesar's friend. But things were all right between them now. Introductions were made. I didn't bow, of course, nor did he bow to me, but I spoke courtesies to him in Latin, a tongue in which I am now quite fluent. During this meeting, I realized that we'd met before, but I doubt he remembered. In the summer, when I was in Herculaneum, I had just finished a swim and was sunning myself on the rocks. An older man wandered by, waving a long stick of driftwood and talking to himself. He seemed peculiar, for his toga was wet up to his knees and he kept pointing passionately at the ocean. An odd one, I thought. But now I know this had been Cicero, perhaps practicing an argument that he might give in court. Evidently, he was enjoying summer at his villa in Pompeii. Cicero now took my hand in both of his. Cleopatra, he said, that idiot Mark Antony told me that a little Egyptian girl was here with us in Rome. Obviously, he's a liar, for you're no child. You may already know that Antony's usually drunk, therefore he seems to spew rather than speak. I like Cicero. Words fly from him like darts. He's near the same age as my father, but he's not dull or soft. We spent an hour, he and I and Atticus, discussing another play called The Frogs. Cicero said he's an active student of Greek literature and tries to keep his mind sharp by memorizing entire works, like entire books or plays. He was so interested in this conversation. I didn't touch our meal of sardines and olives, nor taste my wine. Only when his sedan was brought to the door did I realize it had been raining. He stepped over a wide puddle, holding the hem of his toga to climb into his chair. Remembering my journal, I hurried through the halls to the room. The courtyard was flooded. Our dresses were soaked, as were my letters. Carefully, I peeled apart the soggy papers, hoping to preserve them, but the ink had run. Not one word remained. My folly was forgetting that in Rome, it can rain anytime without warning. Thus, the record of my first winter here is lost. Now to bed. It's raining once again. The white cat is curled by my feet, a small reminder of my arrow. I'm comforted by its purring. To continue, more thoughts on Cicero. He visits Atticus often, and I am his honored guest. I'm always invited to join them. I cannot grow weary of listening to the great Cicero. When he speaks, he strokes his chin with his left hand as if to do so helps him think. He's quite glib. He explained the triumvirate to me, calling it the three-headed monster because Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus are too hungry for power. They have uncertain tempers, he said, and I see disaster ahead for all three of them. Cicero said that I'm the first girl with whom he's enjoyed Socratic conversation, meaning we discuss philosophies and ideas. No trifles or idle gossips. Though Neva and I do love to whisper such things late at night, I will not confess this to Cicero. Morning, first light. I stepped out of bed this morning and almost crunched underfoot a dead dormouse that the white cat had left for me. I picked it up by its tail and tossed it outside into a bush. I'm not ready to cook such a creature. I heard today from Cicero that letters arrived for him from Julius Caesar, who's in Gaul, France, securing more Roman territory. It took just 26 days because a courier rode as fast as he could, changing horses whenever he could, whenever he saw one roaming in a farmer's field. The courier is resting today before returning to Caesar. Julia and others are writing messages. Am I also to pen something to this man? A chatty hello, perhaps, to get on his good side? Sometimes I don't know in my heart if I'm responding the way a royal should or a girl of 13. Often, so often, I wish my mother were alive to explain such things. In the end, I sent him a sachet filled with fresh spices. I've learned more unpleasantness about the richest man in Rome, Marcus Licinius Crassus, or as Cicero calls him, the crass one. I already knew he was part of the first triumvirate with Caesar and Pompey. In my heart, I call him Crassus the Crucifier because he's the one who ordered the cruelties on the Appian Way. Well, here's more. Crassus has his own private fire department. So, one might ask? The other evening, Cicero, Julia, and I had just finished dinner and were taking a walk in the gardens. We saw a glow of light coming from down the street and were curious, so we wandered through an alleyway until we came to the scene. I'll never forget it. A horse-drawn wagon was in the middle of the street, and on this wagon was a huge water tank with a pump and leather hoses for putting out fires. Crassus was the owner of this water wagon. He stood nearby with his arms folded over his fat stomach. He was calmly negotiating with a man who was not calm at all. In fact, he was upset and waving his arms because it was his house that was burning. I crept closer. It wasn't easy to hear their conversation because of the flames and shouts of neighbors who were panicked about losing their own homes. Crassus wanted the man to pay before he would put out the fire. As the man had no money, it was burning to ash inside the house. He said, all right, anything. The poor man didn't realize that anything meant he must give his home to the man with the water wagon. So it is now Crassus who owns the property, and the man is going to have to pay him rent for the rest of his life. Julia believes he sets the fires because he always seems to be at the scene just in time. I think I know why Crassus is the biggest landowner in Rome. To continue, Cicero addressed the Senate today. Instead of sitting on the main floor behind the ladies' curtain, I climbed up the circular steps to the gallery. It was crowded with men and women leaning over the bar to hear Cicero present the closing arguments to his case. I was breathless listening to him. Such eloquence. He strides to and fro, gesturing with passion, and then stops dramatically to look at the faces around him. He knows when to speak softly and when to thunder. Finally, just before sunset, he and the other lawyers met outside and found a way to compromise. Cicero calls this settling out of court. The magistrates will be sitting again tomorrow. I plan to listen to Cicero plead as many cases as possible because I want to learn his skills of persuasion. There's another lawyer who intrigues me as well. He wears a blue toga and paints a black circle around his right eye if he represents a plaintiff, and around his left eye if he represents a defendant. He's quite entertaining too because he pantomimes and leaps about as if an actor in a Greek play. The 16th of March. This is my second spring away from home. Oh, my heart feels so lonesome at times. I have hopes we can be home by summer solstice. Because a messenger ship is leaving from Italy tomorrow for Alexandria, I've gathered together the recent letters I have written to Olympus and Theophilus. Nothing for Berenice. What would I say? Hey, have you strangled another husband lately? Surely they will grow faint when they see the volume of my words. A princess who misses her friends, has much to express. I pray there will be no storms on the great sea or serpents. To be stupidly honest, I'm not sure who to pray to. Poseidon, Neptune, Isis, the unnamed god. There's also Zeus and Apollo and dozens more, but I don't know which one is most likely to listen to a girl. This morning, I visited Father in his garden where his reader was reciting lines from Homer. I dismissed the servant with a wave of my hand, for I wanted to be alone with Father. He didn't look well. When I asked about the soldiers, he walked away from me over to the fountain where he began splashing his face. I stepped around to the other side so he could see me, but he remained busy washing his ears and cleaning his teeth with his finger. Father, please talk to me. My voice was full of tears. Why? When he wouldn't answer or even look at me, I burst out crying. There must be something he's not telling me. How I wanted to scream my fury at him, my frustration. I wanted to rage and to weep. Even so, there remained a part of me, a small part, that wanted to behave the way a queen might. She must not lose herself to temper, or else folly might capture her. But the other part of me, the big part, wanted to be a 13-year-old daughter, the first who was taken care of by her wise father. I wanted him to take us home now and promise to always keep me safe. But I looked at this man, the fallen king of Egypt, my father. I saw clearly, as if in a vision, that this hope of mine was foolish. If one counts by years, I'm merely a child, but I knew I was a strong one. There's no time for me to weep and carry on. Come, Father. I took his hand and led him to a bench in the warm sunshine. I unwrapped the cotton shawl from my shoulders and dried his face with it. I thought in my heart that there were tears on his unshaven cheeks, for soon after I pinned my shawl back on, his face was moist again. Are these tears of regrets? I wondered, does he see what he's become? Though I feel pity for him, I'm still cautious. In some ways, a king reminds me of my leopard. He can be gentle and loving, but if threatened, he'll kill. To continue. Father and I spent the afternoon at the soldiers' barracks. When I noticed a group of men near the stables, I left Father resting on a stool and myself went over. They weren't drilling at all. They were playing a game. Set into the ground about 20 paces apart were 2 iron stakes about a foot high. There were men behind each stake tossing the curved iron shoes that had been taken from dead horses, throwing them, trying to ring them around a post. Horseshoes. I was thinking in my heart of what to say or do when an officer stepped forward laughing. It was Mark Antony. Hail, Cleopatra, what brings you here today? Clearly he'd been drinking because he reeked of wine. I didn't want to waste my time with him. Are you in command of these monkeys? I asked, for that's what you are, playing games when there's work to be done. Princess, he said with his arms in a shrug, how does such a little thing like you have such a big temper? I held up my hand to shield my eyes from the sun. Mark Antony, I said back, how does such a big man like you have such a little brain? At that, I walked away from the stables. Now it's evening. I'm angry with myself for using sour words on a man I need for a friend. Even though Cicero dislikes Antony, I do not. I rather enjoy his wit and good looks. What's the matter with me? Let's see. I think that is a good place to stop for today. And that concludes part 12. All right. I will see you later.